I don't know about you, but I just love, love, love these fall colors so much. And I love that it's everywhere you look, and especially when the afternoon sunlight hits those, red and yellow leaves, it's just gorgeous. As for my cooking in the fall, just like in the other seasons, for the last year or two, I've been trying to make my cooking more seasonally appropriate, let's say. What I mean by that is using things that are more readily available in the season, ideally that come from the Czech Republic, the country where I live in. And one such thing that feels very seasonally appropriate is this pork tenderloin that I will be stuffing with some dried fruits. So I've got these 2 pork tenderloins, which I'm cutting in half, and I'm making a hole in the middle. You ideally want a piece of meat that's a little bit thicker so that you can make this hole in the middle, and I'm going to put the dried plums and apricots into that hole. Now, I was a little bit horrified when I read the packaging on those, because now I can't remember which one, but one of those came from Chile. Like, it's just ridiculous, because of course in the Czech Republic we grow both plums and apricots. They're very typical fruit that you will find in many gardens. So it's just, I don't know, it feels so silly to me that we import these dried fruits from half across the world. But anyways, I guess we just don't dry those fruits ourselves. Once the meat is stuffed with the fruits, I then wrap it in pieces of bacon and then tie a little bit of this like string around it. It's just like a regular, I think maybe jute string that I'm using for this. I don't know if there is like a special type of rope or whatever that you should be using for cooking, but this works fine for me. And you want to do that because what you will then be doing is browning the meat, and you need the bacon to stay wrapped around it, so that's why you need to tie it down with the string.
Do you know how much I love you? You put my favorite song on, I put my feet up, and we just sing along, and I can't help but feel.
Also getting some potatoes ready for a potato mash that will be a side dish for this.
I could stop the time, don't you know that I would? 'Cause I'm just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? Forever. Forever. Forever.
Once the meat has browned on all sides, or the bacon has browned rather, I am putting the lid on this big pan and I am putting it into the oven to cook for another 20 minutes or so. Once it comes out of the oven, I am putting it on this, taking the meat out, putting it on the side, salting it, and putting some thyme on it. The cookbook specifically said to do this after it comes out of the oven, so I followed those instructions. And I'm adding a little bit of honey into the sauce that's left in the pan and thickening it up just a little bit. I always find this kind of a dish a little bit of like a, I don't know, a fun thing, because, you know, when like you don't know what exactly you're going to see once you cut into the meat. I mean, you obviously, you filled it with the dried fruit, but it's just something a little, a little bit different than just your regular piece of meat. And I feel like the sweeter taste definitely works well with the fall kind of weather that we have outside. What also works really well in the fall is all sorts of soups. Here I am making the very basic one. I had some chicken broth that I've made some other day, and I'm just cutting some vegetables. I will later brown a little bit of onion and those vegetables as well, and the rest of those vegetables I'm cutting up into pieces, and I will be storing them to use them to make broth in the future. So I'm using carrots, parsley, and the bulb celery for this. Those are like the classic three that you will see in the Czech cuisine all the time. I also had some of the chicken meat left from when I was making the chicken and the chicken broth, so I added that to the soup, and towards the end I also put some noodles into it just to thicken it up a little bit. And you end up with a super cozy looking meal to go with this weather. As much as I like to rely on things that I just know and I've tested, I know how to cook from memory, I don't need to use a recipe book or anything for it, I also love to try new things, and that's what I'm doing here. I am doing this cauliflower, again, trying to use something that's very seasonally appropriate right now. So a cauliflower with some, I don't know if you would call this tapenade, like it's a sauce from bell peppers and tomatoes. And what I also love to do, if possible, is kind of split my prep work. Let's say that there is something that I can do in the morning when our child is occupied, or maybe she's in the kindergarten or something, and I have 30 minutes to do something, then I'll go ahead and do that prep work, cut up some vegetables. Or like in this case, this is actually the day before we were eating the final meal, I'm making that sauce. I'm very simply just cutting the bell peppers, removing the seeds, and cutting the tomatoes, and putting all of that into the oven to cook for about 20 to 30 minutes, basically until you start seeing the brown skins on top of both the bell peppers and the tomatoes. You then want to remove all those skins from, again, both the tomatoes and the bell peppers. And that's pretty much what I did in the morning. In the evening, you just let the bell peppers and the tomatoes cool down. I just left them on the counter. I didn't have to do anything else with them. So then in the evening, I mixed everything up. So I added the bell peppers and the tomatoes to the mixer. I also added a garlic clove, some almonds and hazelnuts, 2 teaspoons of red wine vinegar, a little bit of paprika, some salt, and then you start adding the olive oil. My sauce definitely looked more liquidy in the end than what I saw in the picture. I'm not sure if that's because I didn't even add the full amount of the olive oil that it said in the recipe. So, but anyways, I really like the taste, so that was fine. And then the next day, it was time to have the actual meal. So I've cut up the cauliflower into these very thick stripes. I had only 6 of them in the end. You want them to be thick so that it doesn't just crumble apart. But even if it does, that's fine. You can still put it on your baking tray. And then you drizzle it with oil and put it in the oven. Now, what you see me do here is a little experiment. Some of you might know the channel of Ethan Chlebowski. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the name correctly. Anyways, he does these really cool experiments where he's testing how the different brands, or rather products at different price points, taste, and if there is any difference. And one of those experiments he did was on olive oil. And so he was testing whether some really expensive olive oil, the extra virgin olive oil superpower, whether that has any different taste than like a regular cooking olive oil versus, I think the last one he was using was peanut oil, which is very odorless and tasteless. So I've got an olive oil as well, and I'm using rapeseed oil, which is for me that oil that has no aroma, no taste. And he also said that when he tested this with a very similar example where he was drizzling some vegetables that he was then baking in the oven, that he couldn't test any of the oils in the vegetables afterwards. So he suggested doing adding the olive oil after the vegetables are made, or after they're done cooking in the oven. And so I thought that that was a really cool experiment that I wanted to do myself. So I added my virgin olive oil to 2 of those cauliflower steaks, and then to another 2 I added the neutral olive oil, the neutral rapeseed oil. Or actually, I did the neutral to 4 of them and the olive oil to only 2. And then later, when I took it out of the oven, I added the olive oil to the 2 steaks that had only the neutral on them. So I really wanted to see if I could taste any difference. And it was really interesting because, to be honest, I couldn't taste anything. Like it really all just tasted the same to me, no matter where or when I added the olive oil or the neutral oil. It was all just good. Well, I guess I could maybe taste a little bit the olive oil where I added it after I've put it into the oven, but it was just very, very mild. And so it was really interesting for me to test this myself. And it just, to me, the takeaway is I can just use the less expensive of the 2 oils when I'm making vegetables like this in the oven, because I won't be able to tell the difference anyways. So I guess that's good news. And then I served the cauliflower with that tomato and bell pepper sauce and some potatoes.